Good morning, Bardstown and Nelson County, and welcome to another edition of Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you again on this rather cool and overcast Wednesday morning in downtown Bardstown. Good morning, Margie.
Morning, Jim.
Well, I will tell you, I was on my way in and saw some new yard signs out I hadn't seen before.
Okay.
With the word methane and the international symbol for no, the red slash.
Right.
Saw several signs about that, and that's well, I'll call it what I think it is. It's a knee-jerk reaction to proposals for a plant that wants to open here in Nelson County that would convert distillery waste, or slop as we call it, into methane or biogas, methane, and fertilizer.
Right.
Anyway, there's a lot of unknowns about that, and change is hard. The unknown is scary. But to address those concerns, the company behind the technology that wants to do this is having a public meeting tonight, 6 p.m. at the Civic Center.
Okay.
And they're going to give a presentation on the technology. And I had to do a little research because I'm like, you're going to be turning distillery slop into methane.
Right.
And I'm like, that sounds explosive,
Yeah.
But
of course, the slop itself is something else, too.
yeah. And distilleries, as many distilleries as we have, it's a problem getting rid of it.
Right.
They give it to farmers for feed, but there's only so many farmers.
Right.
Anyway, this company repurposes the waste, and it's in widespread use in Europe. It's pretty interesting technology, and there are some distilleries that use the methane they recover to power, to burn their boilers.
Right. Well, that was going to be my question. What do they do with it after they get it?
Now, they have facilities set up at distilleries in Scotland and around Europe that do that. But this one, I'm not sure, but I don't know that its intent is to produce methane for a single distillery. But there's a couple of different processes involved on what they produce. They can produce what's called biogas. It's a form of methane that's not refined.
Right.
And then they can refine it to make marketable methane. So anyway, and I'm not sure what their plans are, but we'll find out tonight.
All right.
6 o'clock at the Civic Center. So those of you who have concerns, please come and learn, the facts about what this is. And Jeff McKenzie, I know he's going to be down there, and he's really good guy to talk to, easy to talk to, and he can answer any of your concerns about the safety of this technology. And I'm sure company representatives will be there. Like I say, the technology is mature, and it's in places all over Europe, with especially Scotland, where they have a lot of Scottish whiskey. So and they're it's just an effort to try to recoup the waste product that they have to deal with somehow.
Right.
All right. Well, Margie, I didn't mean to get off on that topic, but this is an important meeting tonight.
Yes, I understand.
So if you have concerns about the methane production facility that's been proposed, please come tonight, Civic Center, 6 p.m. And that's all I'll say about that for another 20 minutes. All right.
All right.
All right. Well, Margie, I'm going to let you introduce our very special studio guests we have today.
All right. Well, thank you. We do have two very special guests today, and they are here to talk about what was ZeroV. And ZeroV is a new name for the Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And the two people that we have here are Senior Communication Specialist Angela Conway and Senior Program Specialist Olivia Spradlin. Full disclosure here. Angela is my granddaughter, so she had a little in here on getting in. And doing what a good communication specialist should do, she's taking advantage of all the opportunities to get the word out about what she and others are doing for this organization.
Right. And if she takes anything after her grandmother, she's an excellent communicator.
Well, or at least a very loud one.
Very loud one, that's right.
No doubt about that.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about the decision to move from the Kentucky Coalition on Domestic Violence
Right.
into an organization called ZeroV. People may have heard of one, but not the other so much yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So ZeroV, we're ZeroV, formerly known, as you said, as the Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence. A lot of people know us by KCADV. In many necks of the woods, they know us by that abbreviation. And while our name is new, our organization is far from it. We have been the statewide voice in Kentucky for domestic violence victims and survivors for over 40 years. And it's only very recently that we decided to change our name to ZeroV. And something that inspired us to do that is just that we had grown so much. And being in this movement for over 40 years, you learn a lot about the necessary changes you need to make as an organization to further it and to progress it and to get closer to our ultimate goal, which is to end intimate partner violence and domestic violence in Kentucky. And so for us, we decided that big step should be, changing, our name, changing our brand, the way that we show up in Kentucky, in our communities, and, nationally. And so in spring of 2023, we became ZeroV. And the V in ZeroV stands for violence. So you can think of us as, being focused on zero violence. And one of the reasons why we really love our new brand is because it broadens the focus on what ending domestic violence can look like. And in our 40 plus years of experience, we know that that survivors and victims of intimate partner violence not only experience intimate partner violence, but also experience other forms of violence that can occur at the same time or at a different time in their lifespan. And we like to think of violence as being in like this interconnected web where they all intermingle. And so our focus is broadened now as ZeroV because we know that to end intimate partner violence, we need to concern ourselves with all forms of violence that make it difficult for victims and survivors to live lives in safety and peace.
Well, for example, a person a couple in a relationship, the drug use could lead to the domestic violence.
Sure, and I think that example that you just gave of domestic violence or intimate partner violence and substance use disorder is something that we definitely see as co-occurring very prevalently. And so in order to be able to end domestic violence, in order to receive survivors of domestic violence as whole people who have these complex issues in their lives, oftentimes more than one of them, in order to serve survivors better, really, and to move forward, having in Kentucky where there is zero violence, we had to be able to receive that whole person and recognize these other forms of violence in their lives.
Well, talk to us about the domestic violence centers and your all's role in that.
So we are, sorry, each one are look at each other like, who's going to take this? So we are the state coalition of the domestic violence shelters. We have 15 member programs throughout the state. There's one per area development district. The programs that we work with and that constitute our membership are the programs that are providing these statutorily mandated services for the state of Kentucky. And so what that means is that in Kentucky state statute, it says that the state of Kentucky will make sure that in each area development district there is a domestic violence shelter that does certain things. And then in order to make that happen, the state essentially hires us, contracts with us to fulfill that obligation.
Okay, good.
And so our network is those programs that are doing that statutorily mandated work
Right.
of providing safe shelter, emergency crisis lines, court advocacy, support, things like that to survivors.
Now, are you all connected in any way to the development districts that you're in? Is there, some sort of,
What do you mean by that?
well, just, I mean, are you under their umbrella?
No.
Okay.
No. So the way that we work is that the Cabinet for Health and Family Services
Okay.
actually directly contacts with us, and then we're the statewide administering agency, and then we have these membership programs that we essentially subcontract with to provide those services within the geography
Right.
that is an area development district.
Right. The expansion of your mission makes a lot of sense, because we were talking in the kitchen before that I can remember, and I thought it was a big deal, and it was, when domestic violence laws were changed to include dating violence. And because, in the past, and of course, I'm old, but I remember when domestic violence was, I can remember when officers weren't required to fill out any paperwork if they responded. They would, often it was a case of, well, separate them and then just, then wait for the next call and hope
they sort it out.
And hope they sort it out. But that's all changed. And I think I always thought that the dating violence issue was huge, because it was an unaddressed need. And so I see the change to ZeroV as kind of your recognition that there's greater needs out there, and you need to encompass those and address those and be a part of those solutions.
Absolutely, and I think too, 100% to everything you just said. I think one of the other things that is inspiring to us about ZeroV is it's not just about what we're against, it's about what we're for.
Right.
Right, and you close that line with solutions, and it is about what are those kind of solutions that we can create moving forward, that we can help amplify, that are going to help move Kentucky forwards to a place where all survivors can thrive, where they can live in safety, where they can live in peace, where they can not live in fear. And so that, what are we for and what are we working towards, kind of aspiration was an important part.
Well, with the General Assembly now, what are things that you all or any laws or whatever are you promoting or working for or working against in the General Assembly this year?
I think I know our big priority is the budget, and that has much context to it. But the bottom line there is that we do receive funding from a mix of sources, and funding from the General Assembly and from the state's funds are really essential to our functioning and to our operations, and that money is critical to make sure we have a well-supported staff that can provide the best services that they can to survivors. And so that's really our focus this session, since we're in a budget session.
And you also get federal funding, some
do.
federal funding, which I understand is diminishing.
We do. We get a fair amount of federal funding. There's a particular pot of federal funding called VOCA, which is the Victims of Crime Act, and that there's a certain amount of that funding that comes to the state of Kentucky, and that the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet administers and essentially grants to organizations within the state of Kentucky that fulfill the missions and conditions of VOCA, which is primarily working with victims of crime. Just at the federal level, that fund has been diminishing for a while now. I think and I hope that I am correct in saying that over the last 4 years it's been about 30%. This federal budget cycle that they have up right now, I think would reduce VOCA by about $700 million, which is another 54% reduction, which would be just devastating.
When you say that's in the budget now, you're talking about the Kentucky budget or the
I'm talking
Constitution?
about the federal.
The federal budget.
Yeah, that they're negotiating right now. And so that would mean, of course, the state of Kentucky gets less money because there's less money in the bigger pot.
Sure.
And then as that, again, continues to get split between the different organizations that are funded by that, it would be very devastating, and not just to our shelter programs, but also to like the rape crisis centers and to the child advocacy centers and to places like that.
And as we were talking earlier, also CASA, which
Yeah.
you know,
Near and dear to my
that
heart.
those near and dear to my heart. But yeah, I mean. It used to be that VOCA was a well-funded fund because they took money, that say that corporations had to pay because of whatever rule they violated or whatever, and all that money could be used for this purpose. So I think they must be siphoning it off and using it for other purposes, because there's no shortage of those things happening.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case or the situation. I don't know what's going on in Washington.
Well, who does?
But the end result has been that VOCA is diminishing.
Right.
That it's really having a huge impact on funding, and funding that provides essential emergency and like life-saving services to people in communities, and programs that really are important for community health and well-being, and for people's health and well-being, and for survivors' health and well-being, and bottom line safety.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, it impacts, excuse me, communities in so many bigger ways than like the way that we commonly think about, intimate partner violence. Like when people think about intimate partner violence, they think about, like physical abuse, but and like the impact to the person. But when we're thinking about it, like on a community level, it impacts our communities in that, when people can't live, safe lives. They are dependent when they can't live safe lives, there's like an economic impact with that. We have to recognize that survivors and victims of intimate partner violence are our neighbors. They are our mothers, our sisters, our brothers,
Our employees, our coworkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, to your point earlier, Jim, about how, domestic violence used to be just a problem in the home. That's one of the biggest reasons why it's not, is because that ripple effect, impacts entire communities.
Sure.
And that's why it's, more important now than ever for all of us to be, energized and active in, concerning ourselves with domestic violence and the way that it impacts our communities, and doing what we can to make an impact that keeps the awareness up, and that helps keep survivors safe. So the funding piece is pretty big for us, because if these life-saving services didn't exist, where would survivors go?
Right. Well, I don't know that you can answer this, but who's in Washington to lobby on your all's behalf? Because this is such an important issue, not just in Kentucky, but nationally.
In every state, right? There is a national network that's the National Network to End Domestic Violence, and kind of like we're the state coalition for all the programs in the state, right? Like they're the national coalition of all of the state coalitions. So that's each coalition in each state is a member of NNED.
Right. So they're kind of the voice in Washington. Good.
Yeah, advocating on behalf of all the states and the territories.
Sort of helping to marshal resources and to give voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, Jim and I both remember back when, as we were saying earlier, domestic violence tended to be treated as a lesser offense by sheriffs and policemen, and when they called to domestic violence, as Jim said, sometimes they didn't even write out a report for it.
No.
that it was not. But, this has helped, this organization has helped to bring about the awareness that violence is violence, and that can lead what they might consider an argument between partners is really symptomatic of a larger problem, and the fact that many of those end up being deaths.
Yes.
Absolutely. We have been working on with the newly formed Center it's the Criminal Justice Statistical Analysis Center. I'm sorry, I had to do the acronym in my head and then figure out what the words were that went with it. On an annual domestic violence data report that actually part of the data stream for it is what we call JC3 forms, which is a form that
Police fill out.
the police fill out, and they have to fill it out every time they respond to something that might be domestic violence. So
Right. To me, that was a
lot.
huge change when they were mandated to fill out a JC3, because they're even supposed to log it when they on their radio calls that they filled one out. But that's documentation. That's
Right,
valuable
exactly.
to prove the width and breadth of the problem, of the issue.
And I think certainly, like with everything, data could always be better and more complete and robust and everything else.
Sure. But this is a great first step.
We have so much more in terms of that than we used to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, let's pause now and take a commercial break. You're listening to Bradford and Brooks and our special guest, and we'll be back with more after these messages. Stay tuned. All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you, and we'll be here till the top of the hour. And then stay tuned to WBRT for the best in state and local news. All right, Margie and I are joined today by our guests, Olivia and Angela, who are with ZeroV, which is the new, the rebranded name of the Kentucky Coalition for Domestic Violence. And they're here talking about the reason they changed their name and kind of an expansion of their, actually it's not, I don't know if it's an expansion of your all's mission or just an acknowledgement that violence is more than just, intimate partner violence. And that it's, as you said, Angela, it's kind of a web of interconnected parts of everybody's lives.
Yes, absolutely. One of the main reasons, why we had changed our name is, Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence. It was so specific, and I think when you hear against domestic violence, you think that it's one issue, right? But it just as you said, with violence existing in a web, we knew that to end intimate partner violence, we have to address all violence. So yeah, that was a huge reason for our shift. Is, as you said, continuing with the same goals in mind, but finding innovative ways to get closer to them than ever before.
Well, tell us about your latest effort here. I know we were talking between times.
Oh, are you talking about Shop and Share?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about Shop and Share. Day in and day out when we talk about our work and talk about what we do and how folks can make a positive impact on the lives of survivors. A common question that we get is, from people is, what can I do to help, right?
Right.
Domestic violence feels like such a big, untouchable issue. If you've, not experienced it, if you don't know someone that has, experienced it, or, if you're not already in, a gig that allows you to know more about it. Right. We get that question all the time, like, what can I do to help? Coincidentally, there's a great opportunity to help that's coming up real soon. It's our annual statewide donation drive called Shop and Share. And Shop and Share is initiative is put on in partnership with us, ZeroV, and the First Lady of Kentucky's office. This is going to be our 16th event. And so for one day in the year, it's traditionally on Super Bowl Saturday, so the Saturday before Super Bowl Sunday, it's an opportunity for members of our community to come out and support survivors of domestic violence and our domestic violence shelters by shopping at their local grocery store, like local Kroger or local Food City location, shopping and sharing an item with their local domestic violence shelter. The idea behind it being that, if you're out shopping, on the weekend and already buying things for yourself, on that Saturday, just grab a needs list from one of the volunteers that's passing them out and pick, one or a few items off of that list to donate to the shelter pantry. And those donations go to help supply your local shelter's pantry for the year ahead.
Right. Well, I can see where that's great having a list.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need more, because if I'm going on shopping on Super Bowl Saturday, I've got blocks of Velveeta cheese, chips, sausage.
Now we can see where this is headed.
Yeah, and so the shelter doesn't need blocks of Velveeta cheese, obviously.
No,
I guess you could, but
we could.
You have bigger needs.
Yeah, most of the things that are on the list are pantry items, like shelf-stable pantry items or canned goods.
Right.
Also hygiene items, so think about like shampoo or toothpaste.
Excellent.
Or also items for children, so like
diapers, yeah,
wipes, formula, things like that.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Now, where's our closest participating store that'll be taking part in that?
Absolutely. So for all of our listeners that might want to know a little bit more about their local program that provides domestic violence services, that program is called Spring Haven Incorporated. Their brick and mortar is based out of Elizabethtown. However, they service the greater Ad District, including Nelson County and Bardstown.
I think it's 7 or 8 counties. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. And so for Spring Haven's event, they are going to be utilizing the Kroger locations in Elizabethtown for Shop and Share. It's going to be, the date is February 10th, that Saturday, and most events are running from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you find yourself out shopping, last minute for, Super Bowl goodies, be sure to stop by your Kroger and consider donating an item and dropping it off with one of the volunteers that are going to be at either entryway of those Krogers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And we have a few other partners too that help us out with the volunteering and the staffing, like the Girl Scouts and the Kentucky Federation Women's Clubs. I probably got that wrong, and Angela can correct me.
No. You nailed it on the head. So we're really lucky to have some great volunteer partners this year. Our ongoing need for our Shop and Share events is, generating volunteers that can help us with our events. So, we've talked a little bit about, how some of our programs have a lot to do. We wear many hats. We're providing, direct services to survivors, among other things. And so, what we try and do for Shop and Share is generate excitement around volunteering for the event, so that we can lessen the burden on our program staff and look to our community for support for those that can help in that way. And so we're really fortunate this year to partner with many of our longstanding partners, including the Girl Scouts of Kentuckiana, the Girl Scouts of Wilderness Road, and the General Federation of Women's Clubs in Kentucky. And of course, many of our member programs, all 15 of them, have other partnerships with other community organizations that do their best to staff with volunteers. But we're really fortunate and grateful to our volunteers for helping make our events possible. So not only do they hand out our brochures, our shopping lists and accept items, but they also transport sometimes cartfuls of items back to our shelter, and then have the daunting task of counting them and organizing them and putting them away, which doesn't seem like a big project, but if you have a really successful Shop and Share, you can have pounds and pounds of donations to have to sort through. So we're really grateful for all of our volunteers.
We're hoping we have that problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have cartfuls and truckloads full of
So the-
pantry items to
So
Oh,
this
yeah.
would go to all of the shelters within your reach.
Yes, each shelter takes those Food City or Kroger locations like within their service area. And for some of our programs, the food that this generates is a huge like offset for them not having to spend money on food for sometimes like a couple of months, or to have diapers that they can help survivors with for several months. I think as we've all encountered and experienced, those things are so expensive. And so for our shelters to have like that stock of those things that they don't have to go spend funds on is really huge.
Talking about the diapers, I think there's now a law being considered that would take away the sales tax on diapers, because it is a huge, the disposable diapers are a huge expense, and that people who are experiencing domestic violence and being in a shelter or even not in a shelter, that they would have this expense that
and
possibly they will, if they didn't have to pay that extra 6% on diapers.
Right.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks maybe don't realize that our shelters do accept children, and that many times survivors come with their children.
Right.
And potentially, if they have to, move into a new county to come to shelter, like they may end up losing a job or leaving a job in order to seek that safety. And so things like diapers that our programs can provide to them, at least as like a stopgap, are really important.
Right.
If you've fled a couple of counties to come into shelter and you've had to leave your job to do it, and you have a small child that's in diapers, like not having to worry about that cost of diapers at that moment is like really something that speaks to like peace of mind and safety and comfort, like while you're recovering from all of these other things. So
Well, that's one of the major reasons I would think that you have that the domestic violence shelters are so needed is for women with children, because if you're single, you may be able to go couch surf with your friends, but if you have a child or several children and you're in that domestic violence situation, you need someplace to go where you can take your children.
it's really hard to find housing right now, and housing is really
Sure it
expensive.
is.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all like common questions that survivors, do ask themselves when they're preparing to leave. It's like, well, not only do I have to think about myself, but I have to think about my children. Like, where, how am I going to get them to the school? Like, how am I going to find a space that can accommodate them? And like you said, there are not a lot of friends and family that can put up not only an adult but small children, and then thinking about all of the other questions that you have to sort of answer internally before you make the decision to leave or to flee. And so as you said, Olivia, like it's great that we provide those services and do a lot of like the thinking beforehand, and can provide survivors with the resources that they need as soon as they walk in the door. We've got baby products, we've got even like fun snacks for kids. When I used to work at the shelter in Bowling Green, the shelter kids would love Shop and Share, because like that's when all the really good snacks would come through. So But when you think about being a child that is witnessing or experiencing violence, like sometimes that can be all that it takes to make you feel more comfortable about being in a new space like a shelter is having the comforts of home, and
and to make you feel valued.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
To make you feel like someone really cares.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, Angela and I both used to work at member shelter programs before we came to ZeroV.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, we're very familiar with Shop and Share.
I can remember this would have been like over 10 years ago, but being in Lexington and at the shelter there until like into the wee hours of the morning, sorting and tallying and collecting things. And we had, at that point in time, a really lovely partnership with the police. I don't know if they still do this way, but the cadets had a box truck that they would drive around all day long to all of the different closer locations in Lexington and just pick up all of the donations, and like had a circuit they would do and bring it back and help offload. And it was very valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite stories you want to tell about your experiences, or
What if people want to find more information out about ZeroV? And I'm well. It would probably have been easier to find, the Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Then how do you find ZeroV? Is it I'm hoping it's ZeroV.com or something, or .org or something, but it's and because the question in my mind, do I spell zero? Things like that. So how do we find out? Find you all on the web.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we try to make it as easy as possible for folks. Not only people that want to learn more, but of course to survivors that may be, doing research about resources that are available to them. So you can find us at ZeroV.org, and that's the word zero spelled out, ZeroV as in Victor, .org. And there you can learn more. As a supportive person in a survivor's life, or just an engaged community member, or if you are experiencing intimate partner violence, or want to learn more to empower someone that may be experiencing intimate partner violence.
Sure.
On our website, we have resources that help you identify what intimate partner violence is, and contacts to get in touch with your local shelter, with resources that help you prepare to leaving an abusive relationship. So we have resources that can help people that may be experiencing danger or know someone else that is. We also in our website, we talk a little bit more about some of the policy priorities that we have that we touched on a little bit today. So if you're wanting to learn more about what's important to us and what we're hoping to mobilize around, you can learn more there. And let's say you are a person that just wants to do more and do your part in being an advocate for ending intimate partner violence. We even have an everyday action toolkit for people that want to learn more about, okay, well, how can I implement these daily changes that makes the world safer for survivors. We even have a toolkit to help empower you to be confident in making even the smallest interventions in your own life. So it's all on our website, ZeroV.org, and we're also on socials too, where we are very active in communicating things that are going on in the world of intimate partner violence and news, and also shout outs and celebratory moments too, because we have a lot of really, really great moments.
Margie, you had asked some of maybe our favorite stories, and those success stories, I feel like for me are at our conference recently, we had one of our plenaries was a panel of survivors, and some of whom had gone through our programs, and they're all folks who are actually working in policy and doing systems change level work right now, and hearing their journeys from being in shelter. One of them had a kid when she was living in one of our shelters, and just kind of got off of a housing voucher, and has been able to have that resiliency, right, and perseverance through and she was someone who, through being a survivor, and through her victimization in terms of being a survivor, actually was incarcerated. And so to hear those stories of that actual difference we make in people's lives, I think that's, for me, that's, I think, not just maybe my favorite part, but also part of what really drives me to keep going and to keep doing
to make a difference,
is that those differences you make in people's lives, because it is something that is domestic violence. It isn't just the numbers, right? It's people's lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, from what I understand, the decision to leave is really difficult for someone who's being abused, and it takes a lot of, because you're leaving a known situation, which is bad, and going to the unknown, which can be scarier than what you know.
Yeah, you started this hour off talking about how change can be scary and how fear of the unknown is real, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's true for survivors. And while they may be in a very volatile situation, they know that they have housing. Right? They know that they have food.
And security.
They have that sense of security. And we also know that financial abuse is something survivors go through, and a way of kind of keeping a survivor in an abusive relationship is like sabotaging their work. Or kind of creating conditions in which they either have to switch jobs a lot or can't work. And so that sense of that, even though it's not safe, and even though in many ways it's not secure, right? It's a known quantity that they know how to manage or to deal with. And going into a shelter, and certainly not everyone who's leaving needs to go into shelter or does end up going into shelter, but I think that's also really scary for folks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because they are communal shelters, right? And there are shared living spaces, and they might not be in someone's home community. And so making that move it's a huge act of bravery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why organizations like yours are so important, to support women who need to take that step. That you all have the resources and available to assist.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something else I'll say too, in addition to, providing like shelter services, there are other non-residential services that we offer survivors as well. To your point, Olivia, not everybody, wants or needs to go into shelter. And so, and some folks may take a while in planning to, leave a violent relationship. And so, we have the resources to be able to help you talk through your options, and provide other services that may not require you having to leave your home. So wanted to also mention that too, that it's not always, shelter is not always like the perfect answer, but we have other services that help you, or that can help people along the way in their journey to healing.
Okay.
So.
All righty. Well, we're getting down to the wire. Anything else you want to leave with our listeners as far as ZeroV? And I think the question I think a lot of people ask, well, what can I do? What can I do to help? And because this domestic violence as a category seems like such a large issue, and what can I do as an individual to make a difference, to try to make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to go first?
As Angela explained a few minutes ago, shop and share. And also, as Angela did a really great job of explaining, and just huge props to them for all their work and on the website design and all the work our comms team has done on that, visiting ZeroV.org.
Yeah.
Where you can sign up for newsletters or following us on socials, so that you can kind of get those more real-time updates of things that are happening, that are ways for you to be and stay involved.
Yeah.
And you can donate to your local shelter.
Absolutely. We'll take money. Always.
Or goods.
Yeah.
Goods or money to the
Absolutely.
local shelter.
You don't have to wait for the shopping.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and your everyday advocacy efforts don't have to wait until shop and share time either. You can make these micro interventions in your own life to change the way we show up for survivors, and that means like challenging your ways of thinking, right? Challenging like the social norms and the culture that makes it hard for survivors to live safe and productive lives. It means believing survivors when they tell you that about the harm that they've experienced, and it means being there in whatever capacity is safe and accessible to you, to the people in your life, and including your neighbors and your coworkers, and letting them know that they're believed and that you're, that you're an ally for them.
And taking those situations seriously,
Yes.
not as in the past, well, they're just a couple having a fight.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it takes a change of view
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that what your organization does is a big step in helping the larger community, the rest of us to recognize it for what it is.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, Angela and Olivia, thank you all for coming in today.
Yeah. Thank
We
you.
really,
for
I feel like
having
we've
us.
learned a lot.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Thank you.
Our pleasure. And Margie and I will be back with another Bradford and Brooks next Wednesday. And our guest then, Margie, will be Nelson County Judge Executive Tim Hutchins, who will be talking about kind of the year in review, I think, and then also a look at the year ahead. So that's on the agenda for next Wednesday. So until next week, have a great week. And I think we're going to see some sunshine tomorrow, Margie.
Oh boy, I'm going to get out a trumpet and
next couple
get out in the
days.
yard and yell hallelujah.
Well, I'll be there to get you on camera. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week with another Bradford and Brooks.